There is a kind of pain that changes you forever. Not the kind that passes quickly, not the kind you can explain easily to others. This is the pain that breaks your assumptions about life, about people, about yourself. The pain that leaves you feeling empty, disoriented, and alone. Carl Jung believed that the deepest wounds are not meaningless. They are thresholds. When you survive intense psychological suffering, something fundamental within you shifts. The old self, the one that depended on certainty, validation, or illusion, cannot return unchanged. If you are still standing after the worst pain of your life, it is not by accident. Pain forces the psyche to confront what it has avoided. It strips away false identities, unconscious attachments, and outdated beliefs. What remains may feel fragile at first, but it is also more real, more grounded, more honest. Jung called this process transformation through suffering. The psyche does not grow by avoiding darkness, but by integrating it. What you endured was not meant to destroy you. It was meant to deepen you. After great pain, there is often a strange quiet. The chaos fades, but meaning has not yet arrived. This in-between phase can feel confusing. You may wonder why relief has not turned into happiness. But this pause is essential. It is where the psyche reorganizes itself. You are not the same person who entered the pain. And you are not yet the person you are becoming. This is where the reward begins, not as pleasure, but as clarity. You start to see life differently. What once mattered loses its grip. What once terrified you loses its power. You develop discernment. You recognize what is essential and what is noise. Jung believed that consciousness expands through suffering that is faced honestly. The reward is not comfort. It is awareness. A deeper connection to yourself. A stronger inner center that does not collapse when life becomes uncertain. Having survived the worst pain, you carry something invaluable, resilience that is no longer theoretical. Wisdom that was earned, not borrowed. Compassion that comes from understanding, not judgment. Your reward may not arrive in the form you expect. It may come as peace instead of excitement. Boundaries instead of approval. Purpose instead of distraction. And slowly, life begins to meet you at the level you have reached. Relationships become more authentic. Choices become more aligned. You stop betraying yourself to belong. This is the quiet gift hidden inside suffering. So if you have survived the darkest chapter of your life, do not rush forward or backward. Stand where you are. Let the meaning unfold. You did not endure the worst pain for nothing. Now, something deeper is possible. Something deeper is already taking shape, even if you cannot fully see it yet. After extreme pain, the psyche becomes more honest. You can no longer tolerate what once felt acceptable but hollow. You sense when something is misaligned, and you no longer have the strength, or the desire, to pretend otherwise. Jung believed that after suffering, the soul demands truth. Illusions become exhausting. Masks feel heavy. This is why many people feel strangely detached after surviving their worst pain. It is not numbness, it is clarity beginning to form. You may notice that you are quieter now. Less reactive. More selective with your energy. This is not weakness. It is integration. Your nervous system has learned what truly matters. The reward is also a new relationship with yourself. You stop abandoning your inner world to meet external expectations. You listen more closely to your instincts. You trust your intuition because it has guided you through darkness before. And with this trust comes a subtle confidence. Not loud, not performative, but stable. You no longer need to prove your strength. You have lived it. Jung spoke of individuation as the reward of conscious suffering. When pain is faced rather than avoided, it shapes a more complete human being. Someone capable of depth, restraint, and meaning. Life may not suddenly become easy, but it becomes more coherent. You respond instead of react. You choose instead of cling. You walk forward with less fear because you know you can survive what once felt unbearable. This is the reward that cannot be taken away. What comes next is not a return to who you were, but the emergence of who you are now. And as this new self begins to emerge, you may feel out of place in your old world. The environments, conversations, and ambitions that once defined you no longer fit. This can feel like another loss, but it is actually a sign of growth. You are no longer compatible with what required you to be smaller, quieter, or less aware. Jung understood that transformation creates distance before it creates belonging. When consciousness expands, the psyche naturally separates from what is unconscious. This separation is not rejection, it is alignment. You begin to value depth over intensity, meaning over excitement, truth over approval. Your standards rise, not out of arrogance, but out of self-respect earned through suffering. The reward also shows itself as boundaries. You no longer tolerate emotional chaos, manipulation, or self-betrayal. Not because you are hardened, but because you are integrated. You know the cost of inner fragmentation, and you refuse to return there. There is also a new compassion in you. You see suffering in others more clearly, but you no longer try to save them at the expense of yourself. You understand now that everyone must walk their own inner path. Jung believed that those who survive deep pain and make it conscious become carriers of wisdom. Not teachers by title, but by presence. Your calm, your restraint, your honesty speak louder than explanations. This is how the reward unfolds, not all at once, but quietly, steadily, through how you live. You are not chasing happiness anymore. You are embodying meaning. And in embodying meaning, you begin to move through life with a different orientation. You are no longer driven by urgency or fear of missing out. You understand that what is truly yours cannot be rushed or forced. This patience is not passive, it is grounded confidence. Jung believed that after suffering, the psyche seeks wholeness, not excess. You stop overreaching. You stop overgiving. You conserve your energy for what is essential. This is not withdrawal from life, it is precision. You may notice that silence becomes more comfortable. Being alone no longer feels like absence, but like restoration. In this quiet, your inner voice becomes clearer. You recognize when something aligns with your values and when it does not, often before logic can explain it. The reward also appears as courage. Not the dramatic kind, but the courage to live honestly. To walk away when something is wrong. To speak when silence would be safer. To choose a slower, truer path even when others do not understand it. You no longer fear breaking down the way you once did. You know what collapse feels like, and you know that you survived it. This knowledge changes everything. Jung saw this as the emergence of the self, a deeper organizing center within the psyche. From this center, life feels less chaotic. Even uncertainty has structure. Even struggle has meaning. And this is why the worst pain you survived was not the end of you. It was the beginning of a more conscious life. A more conscious life does not promise constant peace, but it offers something far more enduring, inner stability. You begin to understand that pain did not disappear from your life, it was transformed. It became insight. It became grounding. It became a reference point that reminds you of your strength when doubt returns. Jung believed that once suffering is integrated, it no longer controls you from the shadows. It becomes part of your awareness. You stop fearing your own depth. You stop running from difficult emotions. You can sit with them, listen to them, and move forward without being consumed. This is why the reward often feels subtle. It does not announce itself with applause or dramatic change. It reveals itself in how you respond when life tests you again. You remain present. You remain anchored. You do not lose yourself. You begin to live less from expectation and more from intention. You choose experiences that nourish rather than impress. You measure success by inner coherence instead of external recognition. And slowly, you notice something profound. Life starts to feel more honest. Even when it is challenging, it feels real. You are no longer divided against yourself. This is the quiet reward of surviving the worst pain, not a perfect life, but a whole one. And from this wholeness, whatever comes next will meet you at a depth you once had to suffer to reach. From this depth, you begin to recognize how much of your former life was driven by unconscious fear. Fear of being alone. Fear of not being enough. Fear of losing control. Surviving profound pain strips those fears of their absolute power. They may still appear, but they no longer rule you. Jung believed that what we survive consciously becomes a source of inner authority. You no longer need permission to trust yourself. You have crossed an inner threshold that cannot be uncrossed. You know what you are capable of enduring, and this knowledge brings a quiet freedom. You stop over-explaining yourself. You stop chasing understanding from those who cannot meet you at this level. Your life becomes simpler, not because it is empty, but because it is clear. The reward also shows itself in timing. You are no longer desperate for immediate answers or instant outcomes. You allow things to unfold. You understand that meaningful change follows an organic rhythm, just as your own transformation did. There is a grounded dignity in this stage. You move through the world without needing to dominate it or disappear from it. You take your place calmly, fully aware of both your limits and your strengths. And perhaps most importantly, you no longer see your pain as something that needs to be erased. It has become part of your foundation. Not as a wound, but as wisdom. You survived the worst pain not to return to who you were, but to stand firmly as who you are now. And standing firmly as who you are now, you begin to sense a quiet alignment between your inner world and the life you are building. You are no longer split between what you feel and what you do. This coherence brings a deep sense of relief, the kind that does not depend on circumstances. Jung believed that when the psyche becomes more integrated, life feels less like a battle and more like a dialogue. You listen. You respond. You adjust. You no longer force yourself into paths that betray your inner truth. The reward also appears as discernment. You see people, situations, and opportunities more clearly. Not cynically, but realistically. You are less easily deceived because you have faced deception within yourself. You know the cost of self-denial, and you recognize it instantly when it appears again. There is also a new respect for your own limits. You no longer confuse endurance with self-sacrifice. You know when to rest, when to step back, and when to act. This balance is something only pain can teach. You may still carry scars, but they no longer define you. They inform you. They guide your choices. They remind you of how far you have come. And this is perhaps the most profound shift. You no longer measure your life by how little you suffer, but by how truthfully you live. The worst pain did not make you bitter. It made you real. And that reality is the ground on which everything that comes next will stand. From this ground of reality, you no longer ask life to be easy. You ask it to be meaningful. And this single shift changes the way you move through every experience that follows. Jung believed that meaning is what allows human beings to endure almost anything. When pain is given meaning, it no longer feels random or cruel. It becomes part of a larger inner story, one that strengthens rather than diminishes you. You now understand that your reward was never meant to erase what you went through. It was meant to transform it, to turn suffering into depth, fear into awareness, and survival into purpose. There will still be challenges ahead, but they will meet a different version of you, one who is present, grounded, and awake. One who does not collapse inward when things go wrong, but stands steady, listening for what life is asking next. You carry something rare now, an inner center that does not depend on external stability. And from this center, you can build, connect, and create without losing yourself. So if you have survived the worst pain of your life, remember this. You were not broken by it. You were shaped by it. And what comes next will not be a repetition of the past, but an expression of the strength and clarity you earned. The pain has done its work. Now, the reward unfolds, through the way you live, the choices you make, and the truth you no longer run from.